Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yoda brothers, it's the director. Chargers fans, I really think you're gonna like today's video, man. I love putting together videos like this, dude, where I get to, put a complete picture together of what our team could look like in the 2022 season, in a year, man, where the Chargers have really been putting the league on notice. Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, this defense is starting to look lethal and, really represent that vision I'm sure that Brandon Staley wanted to bring with him to the Los Angeles Chargers. But this doesn't mean that free agency in the offseason is finished with, man. In today's video, I really want to go through this roster and see what we can do with our remaining cap space, the free agent signings, as well as the draft, to really bolster this roster into not just playoff contenders, but Super Bowl contenders as well. So it's going to be a good one, man. The final free agent signings of what who I would bring into this team to bolster the roster. Get ready for the draft, and we'll also be taking a look at kind of a mock draft in today's video as well to see how we can fill these holes and really make this team one to watch in 2022. It features, free agency, the draft, everything. It's going to be an awesome video today. I'm super excited to get into this one. Before we do, guys, question in the comments like we always do. Let's say you get one more shot at a decent free agent signing, even a splash, borderline splash if you wanted to say that, at the expense of our in-season budget. We'll go over that more here in just a second. Who are you going to sign? And let's also say that Tyrann Mathieu, Stefan Gilmore, and Akeem Hicks are off the table. Who you guys taking? But with that, guys, let's get into this one. Before we do, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera, action. My early 2022 Chargers roster prediction, as well as how I would finish off the offseason with a bang. Let's get right into this, man. We have so much to cover, but trust me, it's going to be a lot of fun along the way. Let's start off with the roster today, how things are looking. I'll be turning this face cam on and off as we go on in this video. Let's take a complete look at the team as of right now with the free agent, moves that we've made so far. Not too bad looking. I know there's going to be a lot of guys maybe worried about that offensive line. Of course, that's going to be something that we're going to be looking to address in today's video. But a roster, with an offensive line consisting of, I'll be honest, pretty good stars: Rashawn Slater, Corey Linsley, Matt Filer. Those guys look absolutely fantastic. And I know I'm one of those guys that's really high on Brendan Hymus. I want to see the guy play, man. I think there's a lot of upside with that guy. Now, of course, in this graphic, you're going to see Matt Filer at right tackle. I think just given how the roster looks today, Matt Filer at right tackle makes a lot of sense, so I put him here in this, before, the free agency, the final free agency signings version of the roster. Of course, you got Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler. A lot of people wondering what we're going to do at RB2. Is that something that maybe we focus on today? We'll have to wait and see. Then, of course, this receiving core, we're going to go ahead and throw Gerald Everett into that unit as well, because, yes, he's definitely going to be a threat over the middle for Justin Herbert. But you got Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, and Mike Williams. I did want to put an emphasis on Josh Palmer because, again, the Chargers selected this guy in the 3rd round last season. I do think they have plans to get him more integrated into this system as the Chargers season goes on. So, my goodness, man, I think this roster on the offense, which was, touted as a top 5 offense in the league last season, looks really, really good. But, of course, there's also the defense at this point in time, which I think a lot of Chargers fans and even NFL fans in general have to take a second glance at every now and then, because, wow, are we living in the real world? Are we in the Matrix? Is this a multiverse version of what the Chargers offense could look like? This is the Chargers, defense. This is what the Chargers defense looks like today, man. Of course, you got your cornerbacks, Mike Davis, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr. Very, very solid unit of cornerbacks for this team. Maybe outside of depth a little bit. You'll still see guys like Tevon Campbell and Kimon Hall listed on this graphic. Free safety and strong safety, we got Nasir Adderley and Derwin James with Mark Webb, Alohi Gilman underneath them. Very nice looking safeties for this team. Now, as far as linebacker, this is where things have definitely shifted, where Chargers fans may be a little bit concerned because of the loss of Kaiser White. I do need to point out that per Brandon Staley, I do think we're going to be seeing a lot more DBs on the field than we have in seasons past. Drew Tranquil is still a beast. I think highly underrated. I think he's definitely up to the task. Kenneth Murray, however, might need to see an improvement this season. Of course, there were circumstances even outside of football that could have led to a lesser, follow-up season to his career, but at the same time, I still think Kenneth Murray is worth keeping on the roster and hoping that he has a bounce back in year 3. Then we got the big boys on the edge, man. Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Guys, I literally could not believe my eyes when reading that the Chargers had traded for Khalil Mack, not for a first-round pick, but a second-round pick and change. What a steal. The Chargers get their guy opposite Joey Bosa. This unit could be a top 3, even the number 1 pass-rushing duo in the entire league when it comes to being a rival of the Chargers in the AFC West. I have to imagine everybody's sweating bullets, wondering how they're going to stop the duo of Mack and Bosa. That is going to be a very exciting aspect to watch in regards to the Chargers defense this season. And then, of course, that defensive line. Chargers fans know that last season, my goodness, we could not stop the run if it were a nosebleed. This kind of, lack of production from the interior defensive line really hindered the Chargers, and in my opinion, is the sole reason why we did not make it into the postseason. You guys know what I'm talking about. Lots of instances where if the Chargers could just slow down the run, maybe we make it to the postseason instead of the Las Vegas Raiders, which once again still stings. Still, the Chargers adding a couple of very notable pieces to that defensive line, and Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson. Those two guys, very good versus the run. Is it enough? I think the Chargers' run defense is going to be vastly improved with these two guys entering the fold, and I do think it could even have room to become even deadlier versus the run. So that is your Chargers defense as of today, April 5th, 2022. But we're not done, man. The Chargers have a lot of resources to go ahead and bolster this team to Super Bowl contention, and I have somewhat of a blueprint to how I think we can pull this off. And that does begin with, in today, April 5th, I do still think there are moves to be made in free agency. So in this segment, the pre-draft free agent push, we're going to go ahead and highlight guys that I still think the Chargers could sign. It could be before the draft. That's what I'm hoping happens in this, simulation or in this example. But at the same time, there are some names on here I could realistically see the Chargers signing even after the draft. So the Chargers at this point have $9 million of safe money to spend. That means that this takes into account our in-season budget as well as the budget we need to pay our rookies, okay? If the Chargers felt so inclined, they could definitely dip into their in-season budget, which does create $16 million that they could go ahead and try and grab some more free agents with. And that honestly is still a lot of money at this point of the offseason. Now, with this in mind, I want to sign guys that can help right now, okay? While also keeping in mind the draft, okay? You kind of want, at this point when you've got your big free agents, already on the roster, J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack, you want to keep in mind as to who you're targeting, what positions you're targeting in the draft in the next couple of weeks here to kind of complement what these later free agents are going to bring to the roster as well. That'll make more sense as we go on here. So in the post-draft free agent push, the pre-draft free agent push, my first move number 1 that the director would make today in preparation for the draft and bolstering this roster. Free agent move number 1 is to sign a right tackle, and in this instance, I'm going to select Daryl Williams. We're going to sign him to a 1-year, $2.3 million contract and get somebody on the right side of this line to protect Justin Herbert. And again, to me, this is a great signing. I still do think there's a chance that, we don't even sign a guy before the draft. If you guys want more information on that, definitely check out my last video as to the Chargers might not even be, signing a right tackle before the draft, and that could be okay. And this doesn't mean, if I go out there and sign Daryl Williams, it doesn't mean that I'm not still very high on the Chargers taking an offensive lineman round 1, but this is definitely something I think should have. If I were in charge, I'm getting a guy on the right side of that line before the draft even happens, okay? As far as we know right now, like you guys saw in the opening graphic, I think Filer, is likely the backup plan to right tackle. At this point in time, he is the right tackle in my mind right now. But that's not good enough for me, okay? When it comes to offensive line, when you find something that really works, Filer at left guard, I don't know if I want to mess with that too much, but at this point, it might be necessary to put him at right tackle if we don't have anybody else. But if I can keep him at left guard, that's what I'm aiming to do. And a guy like Daryl Williams entering the fold, I think could help address that problem. And Williams, to me, due to his flexibility, in the same sort of realm as a Matt Filer, I think this is great. I think Daryl Williams entering the fold would be very good for this team. A very decent right tackle who can also play guard. You guys know how much I covet flexibility on this offensive line. This is the move I would make, okay? I understand that there are scheme fit concerns, more of a power run scheme rather than a zone, whatever, man. I can overlook these concerns of fit at this moment because when it comes to who's available out there, Riley Reif, injury concerns, Dennis Kelly, he could be great. Honestly, he's another guy that I really considered putting on this list. But again, I wanted somebody with a little safer upside for Justin Herbert this season. Daryl Williams checked a lot of boxes for me, even though he's not the perfect scheme fit, okay? And additionally, like I said before, it adds flexibility for the Bolts. If they want to keep Filer at left guard, now they have the power to do so, or they could kind of go into camp and see, maybe who's the best right tackle fit at this point. It just adds options for the Chargers. Okay, and again, that's something that I tremendously do care about. Now, even if the Chargers do decide to go after a quality right tackle in the first round of the draft, Williams is a huge upgrade over Storm Norton or Trey Pipkins at swing tackle, and he even adds depth at guard, okay? So I love Daryl Williams because he could be a depth signing depending on what we do in the draft. If, worst case scenario, we need him to be the right tackle, I think he's more than up to the task. His role could definitely change depending on the draft too, so I really like this. This puts our remaining cap at $7.1 million, and now the Chargers have a solid body there at right tackle going into the season. Next up, my second free agent move before the draft is going to be re-signing a man a lot of people are hoping returns to the roster in Oday Aboushi. We're going to give him a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. Admittedly, we don't know why. I don't know why Aboushi hasn't been re-signed at this point. It could be injury related. That injury could be worse than we all think. But if he does clear, I see no reason why we don't bring him back. Again, that chemistry that we saw on the offensive line, he was more than serviceable. And O'Day offers stability at the right guard position as well as deepens our depth. So, Hymas could compete if we do decide to go out there and draft somebody. But these first two signings for me, guys, heavily focused on protecting Justin Herbert and providing depth. I think that's going to be a very underrated concept going into this season that the Chargers must address via free agency and the draft this season. This puts our remaining cap at $5.6 million. Not much explanation necessary with Oday Aboushi. We know what we're getting in him so long as he stays on the field. My free agent move number 3 is to sign a kick returner, our return man, Deandre Carter, to a 2-year, $5 million contract with a 2022 cap hit of $2 million, okay? I know a lot of people want Andre Roberts back, myself included, but Andre Roberts at this point, 34, turning 35. The chances that he starts to really digress is pretty big. And I don't know if the Chargers are willing to take that risk. I think in season last year, he really did come in there and save the day, but there's no guarantee that he can come back and do that again at such a later part of his career. And that's maybe why he's not back as of this moment. Instead, I sign a guy who's heavily linked to the Chargers in Deandre Carter. I do think even today, he did visit the Chargers. I don't think he left with the contract, but at the same time, I understand why the Chargers are trying to make this move. Carter is a solid returner who can contribute as a wide receiver depth-wise as well. I like this potential signing a lot. He's not super flashy, but he should keep the special teams unit on the upswing, okay? This would give the Chargers a remaining cap of $3.6 million, and we got ourselves a kick returner, a solid kick returner at that. Free agency move number 4 for the director is to sign corner depth. And in this example, I'm going to go ahead and grab Fabian Moreau to a 1-year, $1.2 million contract. I'm still very high on the Chargers taking a first-round cornerback if the value is there. I mean, my God, dudes, could you imagine if a Sauce Gardner or even a Stingley falls to us at 17, which again, I mean, I don't think it's super likely, but you never know what's going to happen. I even like Andre Booth at pick number 17 for the Chargers. But even then, even if the Chargers decide to do that, depth is still huge for this team. Chargers fans know that cornerback depth has not been a strength of this team for the past couple of years, and I aim to at least make a dent in that issue by signing, Fabian Moreau. Now, I'm not sure if Fabian's going to be the guy, okay? It could be anybody with upside at depth, but when looking at the available free agent cornerbacks on the market right now, I do like Fabian Moreau a lot because he is hella fast, man. The Chargers need more speed on this team. He does remind me a lot of Michael Davis in terms of his, stature. He is pretty tall. He is pretty fast. I do think that adds valuable depth to this team. Again, this would likely be our cornerback, 3 or 4 on this team, depending. He could even compete with Michael Davis for that outside cornerback position. Who knows? I like the signing. He should be cheap. He signed a $1.1 million deal with Atlanta last year. I think he gets something very similar this season. I like the depth here, okay? This leaves the Chargers with $2.4 million left to spend and gives us a nice cornerback to add depth to this roster. And then my final move, my free agency move, number 5, is to sign edge depth, and in this case we're going to go after another former Falcon and Takkarist McKinley to a 1-year $2 million contract. And this is tricky, right? Because I think McKinley's a very, very good player, but there are some concerns as well, okay? This is tricky again because also the pickings are slim as far as free agent edge players that would fit what the Chargers are trying to do, and our cap at this point is definitely drying up. But I do like McKinley. I do think he's a decent player. You also have to remember that Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are not going to be on the field 100% of the time, and that's why I think it's so important that the Chargers address depth at edge right away. I think outside of Chris Rumpf, I'm not really sure who's going to be playing behind, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. In a quarterback-heavy division of the AFC West, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Patrick Mahomes, I think there still needs to be an emphasis on getting to the quarterback, even when your superstars are not on the field. And that's why Takkarist McKinley is going to be one of those priority signings for me, or even anybody that fits what the Chargers want to do at edge 3, okay? McKinley, however, like I was saying, does have some concerns in terms of injury. It's been a sketchy couple of years with Takkarist McKinley, so I can't really 100% endorse this particular signing, but I do endorse, edge depth being a priority for the Chargers this offseason. Still, if McKinley clears, I think he's a great option. He plays great versus the run and the pass, and I think in terms of, the likeliness of re-injury, he'd be in a limited role, right? So I can see McKinley having a solid season if this is the guy the Chargers want to bring in, keeping on the pressure and making sure that rotation is looking very healthy. This gives the Chargers a remaining cap of $400,000. So now, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel, okay? The last thing I will mention, because I think in terms of this example, that will be the last signing for me, but there is a wish list for star signings for myself as well, okay? I'm of the belief that the Chargers, if they're going to be going all in, right, they should dip into their in-season budget. And what that means is that in a lot of the cap projections that we're talking about in today's video and in past videos, I think it's around $7 million is being put aside just in case something does happen in season. And that's coming, these figures are coming per Daniel Popper on Twitter. All right. I think at the very worst, if we need an emergency midseason guy, if the Chargers are really showing signs of making a strong postseason push, I think you should, maybe look at Joey Bosa's restructure as your backup cash just in case, because you have a better idea of how this team is looking and gelling, at the point where you maybe need to grab some emergency funds. But I understand it's not 100% necessary. That budget exists for a reason. It clears off a lot of complications that you would have going forward. Still, I think if we were to dip into our in-season budget, these are some of the guys that I'm targeting. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. We've talked about these guys before. Akeem Hicks, huge signing to completely transform this run D. You rotate him in with Jerry Tillery. A lot of guys talking about Honey Badger. That's pretty self-explanatory. Derwin and Matthew would absolutely feast. Justin Houston, who I actually have not mentioned before. Talk about great edge rushers. That rotation, right? Houston would add, great value versus the run as well. Could it be overkill? Yeah, but I honestly think at that point, if you have the extra money, it's not a bad signing. And then Stefan Gilmore, who we've talked about a lot as well. That would be a power move. The Chargers could boast the best DB room in the league, okay? Those are my wish list, guy, but for the sake of this demonstration, we're not going to dip into the in-season budget. That money could be saved for the Chargers if they want to sign somebody, after the draft as well, before kickoff. So keep that in mind. So I know we're rambling a little bit here now, guys, but take a look at this. We put together a graphic showing off what this team could look like with the selected players that I wanted to sign before the draft via free agency. Looks good, man. Looks good. In this, I don't know. I love everything what I'm seeing with this roster as far as having pieces in place before you go into the roster. This roster looks just wowzers to me. All of a sudden, that right side of the line is at least looking serviceable with Daryl Williams and Brendan Hymus. Go ahead and turn this off one more time. You got yourself a nice option with Daryl Williams. If you decide to go out there and draft a right tackle, you can bump Daryl Williams to guard or a backup guard, or have him compete with Oday Abushi if necessary. If anything, Daryl Williams absolutely upgrades the depth on this team by a lot. But I would project with this roster, if we went into the season with this roster, Daryl Williams would be the starter at right tackle. Of course, at wide receiver, you'll see that Deandre Carter is listed there now. He would be our kickoff specialist, as well as depth to the wide receiver position. And then at defense, definitely some nice pieces added here in terms of depth. Mike Davis, backed up by Fabian Moreau. I like that signing quite a bit. Takaris McKinley coming in there, in relief of Khalil Mack on rotation. That's also a very strong signing. I do think that there's still maybe a little bit of concern when it comes to linebacker and defensive line, but overall, that defense just looks mean and ready to go even before the draft, and that's really what we were trying to accomplish in this exercise, okay, guys? So let's get into the fun segment here, okay? We haven't covered a lot of the draft this offseason because, again, the signings, the free agents, the trades were just so tremendous. But in this case, I really did want to show off what this roster could look like with the free agency signings that we selected, as well as the draft. So let's get into it, boys. The draft. In this exercise, I simulated the draft 5 times, okay, to see who was consistently making it to 17, and then our other draft picks as well. Now, anything could happen. This is the point of the video. I wanted to show off, this roster to kind of see, a good example of what the roster could look like before draft day. But again, anything could happen. I wanted to throw this as kind of like a wrench into the machine to see, really how much we can capitalize by selecting certain people, selected free agents and rookies going into the 2022 season. Anything could happen. So these names may not even be there, the ones that we're going to put on this roster, but still, it's a great example of what could happen in draft night and the kind of positions we might be wanting to target throughout the draft this upcoming April 28th. Now, at this point, I think the Chargers' biggest needs: offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and wide receiver. I think at this point, with what we've done in free agency, those are still the positions I'm kind of focused on. And in this exercise, we're only going to go 5 rounds deep. It should be a lot of fun. Again, I simulated the draft 5 times. I was looking at who was consistently making it, who I was consistently selecting. And I'll be honest, I was surprised, as to how this went down. I was really shocked with who I decided to select. So here we go, guys. The NFL draft stacking on top of this already impressive roster. Round 1. With the 17th pick in the 2020 NFL draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Jordan Davis. Nobody's more shocked than me, guys. I'll be honest. There were drafts, where I was stoked that we landed Chris Olave, Kenyon Green, at one point even Jamison Williams. And there was even one where we got Andrew Booth as well, and that was huge. But there was, one thing screaming in the back of my mind, in 2 out of the 5 drafts, okay, where I decided to select Jordan Davis. We are going to completely overhaul this run defense. That is what Brandon Staley stated early this offseason. And when he promised to do the same for our offensive line last year, he backed it up with Slater in round 1. Okay, so Jordan Davis, surprisingly, even to me, is still going to be the pick. A lot of Chargers fans really want this guy. I kind of softened on him a little bit, but this is what I decided to go with in this example, okay? And again, anything can happen. But as to who can make it, as far as like a biggest impact for this team in year 1, to me, I think it was Davis, and it follows the principles of what we heard from Brandon Staley. All of a sudden, guys, you got to think about this team. All of a sudden, the Chargers, this defensive line transforms from a bottom of the league run defense into one of the best. Really, when you slot him in there with Sebastian Joseph Johnson, wow. Some will say that this signing could be this pickup could be redundant, right? Because again, Sebastian Joseph Johnson. But remember, those guys, Sebastian Joseph Johnson, those guys can move around the line pretty much wherever. We're talking, nose tackle and 3/4 defensive end. They move around. And Davis at nose tackle, your pure nose tackle, is insane when paired up with these guys. Teams will struggle to gain any traction on the ground versus the Chargers. And you know what this does? This opens up the door for teams to challenge our passing D. They're going to want to pass a lot more because they just cannot take anything on the ground. Enter Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Checkmate. All of a sudden, when teams are forced to pass, you put them in a bad situation where the run is really not contributing too much. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack is going to punish him. J.C. Jackson, Doran James, our impressive DBs are going to close out those plays. It opens up a lot of potential for interceptions, for turnovers, for fumbles, all that good stuff, man. Again, and this also adds the benefit maybe of less playing time for a Jerry Tillery. You know, you could rotate him and Austin Johnson on all of a sudden. So if we need more pass rush, you put in Jerry Tillery. If we're looking to defend the run, you put in Austin Johnson. That defensive line is completely transformed. Just how Brandon Staley, I'm honestly, how he envisioned going into this offseason. This is a slam dunk in my opinion, and one that, surprised me immensely. Jordan Davis being my first pick in the 2022 NFL draft. That run defense, no longer a bottom of the league run D. This is one of the best in the NFL. Now, in round 2, the Chargers select nobody. We decided to trade that pick for Khalil Mack this season, a monster pick, great ad for this team, huge value in terms of draft compensation. So we're going to skip to round 3. With the 79th pick in the 2022 NFL draft, the Chargers are going to go ahead and select Calvin Austin out of Memphis. This would be super exciting. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't think Austin falls to us in the third round, okay? I think when it comes to speedy wide receivers, more often than not, they're taking a little higher than what they're projected. But in my mock drafts, I selected him 3 out of 5 times, okay? So in this example, we're going to stick with it. Now, there was a mock where Daniel Falele fell to us, which would also be a slam dunk. So I want to keep in mind that I'm keeping an eye out for offensive line in round 3 going forward. But in this mock, the Chargers find their speedy wide receiver option for Justin Herbert. Austin won't be Tyreek Hill in this offense. I need to get that out of the way right now, but he'll be a deadly, deadly addition for Justin Herbert and that rocket arm. Guyton and Austin could help replicate what made Justin Herbert's rookie season so special with that tandem of Guyton and Tyron Johnson, man. So Guyton and Austin, that would be a deadly duo. And yes, dropping H-bombs will become more frequent with Austin burning and, getting over the top of those defense. When it comes to the deep ball, Austin will add a lot of value from the third round. I expect him to be immediately put into this offense, obviously situationally, but still it adds a lot of options for how the Chargers want to attack defenses in 2022. So Calvin Austin, maybe a bit of a dream pick. I don't think he's going to be there, but at the same time, we're going to roll with it in this example today. Now in round 4, with the 123rd selection in the 2022 NFL draft, the Chargers select, you guys ready for this one? This one also shocked me a little bit. Dameon Pierce. Third time's a charm, right? In drafting an RB2, I sure think it could be. Pierce could be the freshness that this team is looking for to complement Austin Eckler. And again, do I think Dameon Pierce is going to be there in the 4th round? I think he could be. I think there's a case to be made that there's other running backs that maybe fit what other teams are trying to do better that could be selected first. But Dameon, Pierce being there at this point definitely would be super exciting, and I would hope the Chargers pull the trigger on this one. Pierce, again, complimenting Austin Eckler, a fierce power back that can rotate in short yardage situations, attack between the tackles. Very nice addition to this team, who again can contribute in year 1. I also think that he's underrated in terms of pass protection and special teams. I would absolutely love this pick. I think it addresses a huge need for this team, and honestly, I think it would definitely push out a guy like maybe Joshua Kelly from the roster if this does decide to be a pick. I love Dameon Pierce. I think this would be a slam dunk round 4 selection for the Bolts. And then finally, because we're only going 5 rounds deep in this mock draft, with the 160th pick in the 2022 NFL draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Lucida Smith out of Virginia Tech, interior offensive lineman. Okay, won't spend too much time on this. I think Smith is a guy that maybe could develop into an eventual Ode Abushi replacement. He's a great scheme fit with the upside to really turn into something special in the NFL. Again, he adds depth to that offensive line, which again, if we're not going to be selecting an offensive lineman in our first 3 picks, I do definitely hope we add some guys to compete in camp, and if anything, add some depth on this roster. I think in round 5, Lucida Smith is definitely one of those guys that I have my eye on that could turn into a value going forward, okay? So finally, I know a longer video today, guys, but I love making big picture videos like this. Let's take a big picture look at the 2022 Los Angeles Chargers with the rookies, with the free agents. What are we going into the season before kickoff with? Holy smokes, guys, this roster looks absolutely loaded. That offensive line, which saw a lot of concern to start the season, definitely not like the peak deadly offensive line that's going to 100% protect Justin Herbert, but it looks a lot better than what it did, when we started this video. Ode Abushi coming back, Lucida Smith backing him up, Daryl Williams, Matt Filer, who you can move around depending on, maybe there's one or the other that's better at right tackle. This offers a lot of flexibility for how the Chargers can construct this offensive line before kickoff. You got Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler backed up by Damian Pierce and Larry Roundtree. At this point, I would project Joshua Kelly be gone. And then at your wide receivers, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, Mike Williams, Calvin Austin, Jalen Guyton, and Deandre Carter. That wide receiver core is looking absolutely lethal. And then taking a look at the defense, man, this is where things get absolutely... So I think that offense, guys, once again, has the potential to be a top 5 offense in the league. Once again, we have the additional speed. We've got the addition of Gerald Everett, a really nice offensive line. If anything, it's an upgrade because, Brian Bulaga was not available. Now we got Daryl Williams in there who should be more than serviceable at the right tackle spot. I think it's still a top 5, potential offense in the league this season. 2022 defense, however, man, Mike Davis, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr., Fabian Moreau, Keeman Hall. I think the Chargers could certainly add some more cornerback depth in the later rounds. Of course, remember, we have multiple 6th and 7th round picks. Very solid looking DBs out there. Nasir Adderley, Derwin James. Take a look at the linebackers. I do think the Chargers maybe grab a late round linebacker too to add to this depth as well. But Drew Tranquil, Kenneth Murray, Nick Niemann, Amin Agbagbemiga, it could look a lot worse. Then you take a look at those edge players: Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Takaris McKinley, Chris Rumpf. I'm feeling really good about the rotation, the depth, and especially the starters. And then finally, that defensive line, which again, highlighted as the worst unit for the Chargers last season, could have likely cost the Chargers a playoff appearance last year as well, goes from one of the worst run Ds in the league to now boasting Sebastian Joseph Day, Jordan Davis at nose tackle, and Austin Johnson, which you'll see underneath Austin Johnson, Jerry Tillery now. You can rotate those guys depending on the situation. That defensive line is looking absolutely insane. I don't know, guys. Sometimes I take a step back. I look at, the whole plan coming together. These graphics really do help paint a good picture. It looks absolutely insane. I'm very, very happy with how this turned out for the video. So I think really, again, the only concern to really, close out this video, the only thing I'm really concerned at this point is right tackle. Williams does offer a lot of relief, but I hope the Chargers get lucky and land a guy like Falele in the 3rd round at least to compete. Either way, I'm very happy with how this exercise rounded out. And perhaps the most surprising aspect of this new roster could be, to me, Jordan Davis at nose tackle. And by really focusing on this defensive line, man, it's crazy, dude. Jordan Davis, I softened again on him after the Chargers signed Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson, which again, those guys can move around the line. But I felt it would be set if we did add a Jordan Davis to nose tackle. Honestly, Jordan Davis takes us from improved run D to an elite run D, and I just have a feeling that it's something Brandon Staley would do once again, right? Again, he turned our offensive line from a bottom of the league unit into a very decent unit in the NFL last season by combining the free agency with the draft. I think he could do it again with Jordan Davis this year. And by really focusing on this defensive line, our pass rushers, and coverage free agent signings, my God, they can really help turn the tides of any game. The turnover potential is all of a sudden sky high. This could really shape the Bolts into a top 10 defense in the league, if not better. And that's an upside I think we can all get very excited about. Still, please, guys, let me know in the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts on if you would be happy with Jordan Davis. I know a lot of guys still would be very excited for it. Maybe some guys have softened him. Some guys didn't like him at 17. I totally understand that. Of course, if a guy like Gardner, Booth, Jameson Williams falls to us, which is very possible, I would have to say, this whole mock changes. But as far as going into the draft with an impressive roster, these guys are definitely the kind of moves that I personally would make to get the most out of our 2022 team. So you guys let me know. The Chargers' potential for making it into the playoffs is already very high, with some very, big moves, with some calculated and intelligent moves. I think they could push themselves into Super Bowl contention as well. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Whew. Big video today, man, but these kinds of videos certainly do get me excited. Let me know your thoughts in this whole process in the comment section below. Let me know if you're happy with the way the roster panned out, if there's stuff that you would do different. Let me know in the comment section below. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up, stay frosty, and hit that like and sub button on the way out if you did enjoy this content. Ooh, man, Jordan Davis, that one definitely threw me for a loop.